I don't know what Starmer's trying to do. I don't know where Starmer's trying to take the country.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most divisive and defining concerns of our day has once again emerged with force as the tides of British politics continue to change and spin. The United Kingdom's historic vote to leave the European Union left scars, celebrations, and unresolved issues regarding the country's future path. Amid this ongoing discussion, none other than former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who solidified his political career on the vow to get Brexit done, has launched a fresh attack. Make sure to like and subscribe.
I think you can try. I think democratic socialism is the programme for Kier Starmer's Labour Party, though I'm not sure. I don't want to offend the human bollard and wind him up even more than I have done already.
Today we explore a passionate attack Mr. Johnson started on Sir Kier Starmer, leader of the Labour Party. Johnson calls Starmer a betrayal of the democratic decision of the British people, as Johnson charges him of planning a secret campaign to undo Brexit. The foundation of this allegation is the disclosure of a recently formed government agency charged with handling negotiations with Brussels. This action marks a concerning possible backslide towards European influence for Johnson and his supporters, a concept they fervently disagree with. We will dissect Johnson's angry denunciation, assesses the reactions of well-known political leaders, and looks at the wider consequences of these charges. Let us consider the main questions as we negotiate this story. Is Starmer's idea a planned approach to eradicating the hard-earned freedoms of Brexit or a realistic recalibration of Britain's EU relations? And how does this conflict capture the more general ideological struggle influencing Britain's post-Brexit identity? The crux of Boris Johnson's criticism.
We have just discovered that Kier Starmer knowingly promoted to the cabinet somebody who had been convicted of lying to the police, of obtaining goods by deception, fraud. And if you want to know why he put a fraudster in the cabinet, it is because the whole government is essentially fraudulent and misrepresented to the electorate in July 2024.
Often associated with Brexit, Boris Johnson recently attacked Kier Starmer, the Labour leader, charging him of barefaced lies on his intentions for Britain's future relationship with the EU. Writing in the Mail on Sunday, Johnson expressed concern at the creation of a new Whitehall unit consisting of 100 civil workers, which he says is getting ready to rewrite important features of the UK-EU deal. For Johnson, this is the beginning of what he refers to as a surrender squad, meant to challenge the sovereignty rebuilt via Brexit. Johnson said Starmer's pre-election pledge not to undo Brexit now seems hypocritical. Johnson notes, millions of voters trusted him because he seemed so honest, so indignant at the suggestion that he would betray Brexit. But he now charges Starmer with misleading the public and following measures meant to realign Britain with EU rules, therefore opening the path for bloc rejoin. Johnson's explosive speech warns that following EU policies would be like Britain, clicking our heels and bowing respectfully to Brussels. The position of the Labour Party and Starmer's plans. Examining Labour's declared stance helps one to grasp the degree of Johnson's criticism. Emphasising the need of more robust economic and security cooperation, Starmer has advocated for a reset in relations with the EU. Labour's story presents this as a sensible strategy for removing trade obstacles, boosting public safety, and so fostering economic development. Starmer has established priorities including enabling economic deals, establishing security alliances and promoting climate change cooperation in his vision of resettling relations. Critics counter that these programs are not free, though. Brussels is probably going to demand concessions, including respect of EU rules, preservation of fishing rights for European countries, and the resumption of young mobility programs. Labour denies any ambition to rejoin the single market or customs union, but critics wonder whether these guarantees are sincere or only cover for a more ambitious plan.
Honestly, I think that it's been epically bad. It sort of feels to me as though they organically, institutionally, didn't believe they were going to win the next election, right? So I think it feels to me like Starmer was put in as a sort of placeholder.
Opposing views. Johnson's allies and their issues. Boris Johnson is not by himself in his criticism. Numerous prominent Conservatives have joined the debate, amplifying his cautions about an anticipated sellout to the EU. Former Brexit negotiator Lord David Frost has called Labour's approach a betrayal and warned that the reset will compromise Britain's capacity to create her own laws and regulations. This large unit is getting ready for a significant renegotiation, Frost says, stressing that the size of the new team is far smaller than that of the original team negotiating the Brexit agreement. Former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan Smith raises similar issues, charging Labour of selling out to Brussels. Duncan Smith foretells Europe demanding something in return. They yearn for the UK under their authority once more. This represents the worst sellout and a tragedy for our sovereignty. Jacob Rees-Mogg, another ardent Brexiteer, compares Labour's strategy to a grandmother's footsteps approach, where the public may not become aware of minor shifts towards EU alignment until it's too late. Whitehall Unit Mechanics. The newly established Whitehall Unit, which insiders say consists of officers from several government agencies, fuels most of this debate. The main goal of the team is to guarantee that any renegotiated agreements with the EU are strong and impervious to reversal by the next governments. Critics say the unit's closeness to number 10 Downing Street and its direction under a senior civil servant with a rumoured pay of £200,000 reflect its importance. Advocates of the unit contend that it reflects the pragmatic necessity to overcome unresolved problems resulting from the original Brexit agreement, including economic impacts and Northern Ireland's particular difficulties. Critics such as Lord Frost, however, argue that its scope and scale point to an ambition well beyond simple troubleshooting, an ambition he and others consider to be perilously near to re-entering the orbit of the EU. More general political and public responses. The publication of Labour's EU policy has spurred intense discussion not only among MPs but also among the general public. Advocates of deeper connections to the EU contend that, especially given the UK's continuous problems, including inflation, labour shortages, and trade interruptions, the economic problems exceed the symbolic value of sovereignty. Long advocating simplified trade policies, business leaders see Labour's ideas as a positive start towards more economic stability. Strong Brexit advocates, on the other hand, see Labour's actions as a betrayal of the result of the referendum. For many, the promise of Brexit was about regaining national autonomy and authority over borders, laws and fisheries, as much as about economic policy. Every concession seen to compromise this control is greeted with strong opposition. Political gamble of Starmer. The way Kier Starmer approaches politics shows a deliberate gamble. On the one hand, his approach appeals to voters disappointed by the economic consequences of Brexit since it presents a picture of sensible solutions and international cooperation. Conversely, it runs the danger of alienating conventional Labour voters in Leave voting areas who would see greater EU links as a compromise of their principles. Starmer's background complicates this delicate balance. Prominent supporter of a second referendum during the divisive early years of Brexit, he encounters residual scepticism from Brexiteers. Johnson's claims of duplicity make it more difficult for Starmer to persuade voters that his goals are pragmatic rather than ideological by pursuing a reset with the EU. The extended ideological conflict. Boris Johnson's conflict with Kier Starmer is symptomatic of a larger ideological struggle over Britain's post-Brexit character. Brexit offers Johnson and his supporters a basic statement of sovereignty and self-determination. Any attempt to weaken its results is considered a disrespect to democracy and a transgression of the mandate of the vote. The story is more complex for Starmer and Labour. Although they accept the result of the referendum, they contend that positive interaction with Europe will determine Britain's future success. This viewpoint acknowledges that in an interconnected world, total secession from the political and economic orbit of the EU might not be practical. A nation in a crossroads. The ongoing argument has left Britain at a critical juncture. Boris Johnson's criticism of Kier Starmer's points of view on basic concerns of democracy, sovereignty and national identity is Labour's reset a veiled attempt to overturn the outcome of the vote or a sensible reaction to post-Brexit reality? Does increasing interaction with Europe constitute a necessary concession for economic stability or a betrayal of British independence?